Hi, and welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. My name is Nikki Vo, and I'm your host. I'm a boat owner, a marinas owner, an international conference presenter, and a huge advocate for boating. I'm sharing the stories from every nook of the boating industry with the intention of encouraging more women to join me and for more women to get behind the helm too. I want to share the experience and opportunities of boating, of the boating industry, and I want you to join me as I bring the conversations and answer all the questions you've had. Boating is not just for the glamorous and rich and famous. It's full of beautiful and interesting people making the most of our natural environment and getting out there enjoying the waterways. So let's let off the lines, take over the helm, and escape to the world of boating. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Boat Princess podcast. Now, today is a privilege for me because I am interviewing someone I hold very high in this industry. She is what I call a legend of our industry. She's very humble about that. She won't let me call her that, but I'm going to call her that because it's my podcast, so I'm going to call her that. So, Michele J Goldsmith, the wonderful, incredible Michele J Goldsmith, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Thank you for having me. And I would say from one legend to another.
Oh, God love you. See, that's the kind of woman she is, yeah? So, interesting, Michele, on your LinkedIn.
Yes.
You put yourself down as an artist, media brand leader, and seeker. That's how you describe yourself. So in your mind, you are primarily an artist then, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
That's what I studied. That's how I view the world. And I'm a painter by trade. That's how I grew up. I am a visual thinker, as my professor in college would tell you. And it served me well because it's the creativity side of what I do that gives me the most satisfaction.
Yeah. But you also, you've been in this industry for a very long time. Tell me how you first came into the marine industry.
So let me finish answering your first question. So It says that I'm an artist,
yes,
a media brand leader, which
yes,
I am, and a seeker.
yes.
And the seeker in me seeks adventure, seeks unusual experiences, seeks living life to the fullest, and seeks beauty in everything. So if I say seeker, that is why I say seeker. And as you and I both know, I tend to look for epic challenges if I can, whether it's doing something for the industry or getting to Everest. I started in the industry. I was actually working in another industry and my company was sold. And it was sold at the same time that my father's company, which was owned by a company called Chemtainer in New York, was looking for an operations director. And I walked in and said, let's give it a try. And they said, well, you're a woman. And then they said, but you have the right last name, so we'll give you 30 days. And that 30 days turned into 10 years. So for the first, almost all of them, I ran operations and then trained the person that took over for me. So I ran rotational molding factories, plastics, in Rhode Island, mainly on the northeast coast of the U.S., and then down in Tennessee and in Florida. And at that time, because if you wanted product out of the factory, you were calling me, I got to know most of the leaders from the boat builders and the aftermarket companies. And it just naturally progressed into a relationship that then turned into sales. And because I had an art background and we ran so lean, I wound up doing all of the marketing for the company as well. Wow. So they're still using the logo that I designed for Todd.
There you go. So when was that?
I started in the industry in May of 1991.
Gosh.
So it's been 33 years and it's gone by fast.
Yeah.
But I've had such a strange journey, but I don't think I could do today what I do without having done everything that I've done before, because it's a knowledge base of the industry, the people within the industry, the way that things are manufactured, the way that boats are manufactured. I've been to boat plants from Kaohsiung, Taiwan to, northern Italy and everywhere in between. I've crawled in engine rooms. I sold really technical products. So that background has just been invaluable to me. No one can kind of pull the wool over my eyes on product, so to speak, because I've seen and watched not only how they're made, but how they're used.
Yeah, amazing. And I know you have very sort of fond memories of some of those companies you worked for. So Lipid Components, Master Vault, Power Products, LLC, all those guys. You really have a fond memory of working with those companies.
I do. I switched from plastics and T-nuts, making seating and holding tanks and water tanks, to electrical products. And I'll never forget, one of the first meetings I had was at Cruisers Yachts in Wisconsin, and their head of engineering was a nuclear engineer. And it was my first meeting. I was deer in the headlights. I had just started. I was less than 30 days with the company. And they stuck me in a room with a nuclear engineer talking about electrical systems. And I could hear the reps outside laughing. And it was that moment where you're thrown in the deep end and it's up to you to swim with the tide and understand what you know, what you don't know, and what you can learn. And in the end, that engineer wound up being a dear friend and wound up helping me.
Yeah.
And I also spent a lot of time on industry boards and those relationships and understanding the perspective of people in different sectors of the industry and how we come together for the better of the industry was really important.
Yeah.
And those friendships are really, you and I know, we have the privilege of getting to know each other and becoming friends. It's those relationships that are what are so special about the industry, and they shouldn't be taken for granted because other industries aren't like this. There aren't a lot of industries where you've known people half your life.
So true. So true. And that comment there about art, I'm imagining when you sat in that room with that nuclear engineer, you asked lots of questions.
I did.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the fundamental differences between women and men, and not being negative to men, but they have egos and they kind of get in the way of them wanting to ask those questions and looking a bit naive or a little bit out of their scope because their pride gets in the way of that, right? But I know I as a woman and you as a woman throughout the industry, we've always asked so many questions and learnt so much as a result. So yeah, and that's why those sorts of friendships do develop and stay with you. And I constantly asked you questions because you've got so much knowledge. So yeah.
Well,
brilliant.
And the same for me with you, understanding, we were at lunch yesterday and I was asking you about how, how your market works within Australia and the different pieces of it and how they come together. There's always something to learn. Being a continual learner is important as a leader. It's something that I really think is important. And I actually think it's really important to go outside of the bubble. I think one of the mistakes that the marine industry makes is that we stay within the shelter of the marine industry. Getting outside of that industry, I go to a conference every September that's completely outside of the marine industry, and to learn from people from Amazon and Moderna and Microsoft and Jose Andres, hearing about how he's running World Central Kitchen. It just broadens your scope and you get these ideas. There are ideas that I implement all the time that come from sources that have nothing to do with marine. But I think as we mature within the industry, there's less of that need to voice your own importance, so to speak, and to sit back and learn and to actively listen. And there's so much more that you can gain out of actively listening. And I think yesterday, Rhoda made that comment about body language, tone, and words, and that words only account for 7% of how we comprehend. I thought that was really insightful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say that doing this podcast has been the growth in my listening skills. Doing this podcast is incredible, and I really value it. And I've realized how incredibly good it is to be a good listener.
Yes.
You learn so much and you grow so much by simply listening. It's a wonderful, wonderful skill.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so you've worked for those product companies.
Yes.
And you've really enjoyed what you've done there. And then you've somehow come into media. How did that happen?
It was interesting. So I went from plastics to electrical, and then wound up with Mastervolt. I ran sales and marketing for the US for Mastervolt, and then global marketing for Mastervolt. And then they were sold, and stayed with the company through being sold to a US company and then to private equity, and then left. And I went to a company called Lippert, which I loved. I'm still in touch with their CEO and some of their senior leadership people. And it was a chance to bring a company that was one of the largest component companies of the RV world, about a $4 billion company, into the marine world, and work with them on, building product, building relationships, acquisitions. And it got to the point where I had done what I needed to do there and was looking for different challenges. I knew that I didn't want to move to Elkhart, Indiana, where they're based. And I had been doing the media buying anyway. And my predecessor at Trade Only was retiring. And he said, would you even consider this? And it was at a time that I really would. And I thought, how great to stay within the industry, utilize all the skills that I've had, because I was a meeting planner when I first got out of school. So even to use those skills, which I had used to a certain degree, running rep groups and distributor meetings and all of that, but to be able to use those skills, use the art skills, the relationships in the industry, and kind of package it all into media. And I went to the two men that are my sounding board, my mentors in the industry, and they said, media? What do you know about publishing a magazine? And I said, I know absolutely nothing. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
I get to learn something completely new, a completely different aspect of the industry, but yet stay in the industry. I got some great advice, because I knew I wanted to make a change, and there was no particular company that I wanted to work for. And a friend of mine said, think about the characteristics of what you want in a job. And my 4 pillars were, I wanted it to be creative, I wanted to lead a team, I wanted it to be global, and I wanted to be able to give back to the industry. So anything that I considered had to meet those 4 criteria. And when I had the opportunity with Trade, it just fit all of those so well. And I remember sitting with my now boss in New York, and I said to him, if you're just looking for someone to sell ads, I'm not your girl. If you're looking for someone to transform what that media is and push the conversation that the industry is having, then I'm your girl. Or your woman, I should say. And we agreed. And I'm really blessed. They've really allowed me to be super creative, to go outside of the box, to take it in completely different directions than what it was before. And I remember showing up with a whole new cover design for Trade. Trade never was one single photo that was full bleed and just completely simplified. It looked like a newspaper when I started. It had newspaper articles and little tiny photographs and a border at the top.
Mm-hmm.
It literally looked like a newspaper, like the daily news that you get here at METSTRADE.
Yeah.
That's what the front cover of Trade looked like.
Wow.
So to completely change the design of the magazine and what it looked like, it was such an out of the box for them. It was a shock.
Yeah.
But to see what it is now, and the first cover that we did was Hervé Gastonel. At the time, we did not know that he was the keynote speaker that year for Mets. But I knew that because we were an American magazine, and we didn't have a large presence in Europe, I wanted to look at a company that was as big in Europe as it was in the US, because I knew if we did something like that, that it would entice the Europeans to look at the magazine. So not only did I get a photo, full bleed photo on the front cover, I got a person in that photo, and I got a full frontal Frenchman on an American magazine.
That's impressive.
And I actually found that photo of him on a lifestyle magazine.
Yeah.
The equivalent of, in New York City, they have Gotham magazine.
Yeah.
The equivalent of that kind of magazine. It was, I remember finding the photograph, and then to hear that he was the keynote, it just all fit so well.
Yeah.
That it was the beginnings of, and that was 6 months after I started.
Wow. So you've completely changed its look, its feel, you've modernized it to what it should be, and all that. That must be really exciting doing that.
It is
like that.
It is. And you may not know this, but that when we launched that magazine, so that was the second full bleed cover, and the first one was for Ibex. That year, we also did our first live streaming from Ibex in 2018. It was before influencers. It was before TikTok was what it is, what it is today. It was before Ben Taylors and content creators and the kinds of podcasts that you're doing now. And Irene Dross came to our stand, which we took 50% of our stand and made it into a television studio.
Wow.
And
cool.
it was such a content rich environment. To not be interviewing the leaders of the industry just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And I knew that the way that media was going to be consumed in the future was going to change. And so offering people different ways to consume that media was going to be important. And to be able to live stream, because we were live streaming on Facebook, because that's what was available. It was before it was Meta.
Yeah.
At that time. And Irene came up and said, would you do that at Mets? Because it didn't exist.
Yeah.
So we were the first ones to bring live stream video content to Mets back in November of 2018.
Amazing. Yeah. So you really have
18 or 17. It was one of the two. 18.
And
November
that's one of the
18.
key things of staying successful in any form of communications and media, isn't it? You've got to stay ahead of the game of what the consumer expects.
Absolutely.
And where the consumer is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and interestingly, with the boating industry, you've got some really different consumers. There are definitely people out there that would absolutely still just love to see the magazine in its original form and read that. And yet you've also got consumers that want to see it in a digital form, in a live TV / podcast / whatever form.
Absolutely.
So you've actually got quite a mix of people to cover, haven't you?
Yes. And it keeps changing. And what they want keeps changing. I think print is not dead. Believe it or not, trade only in the last 12 months, our readership of the print piece has gone up 30%.
Yeah.
So I'd love to say, I think we put out wonderful content. We do. And beyond that, I think people are just realizing where they want that content to be. They said, okay, I'm going to be working from home now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to the office. So I'm going to have the magazine come to me. But we go out to 40,000 people a month. We're the only monthly trade magazine left because we consider ourselves a news organization. Our tagline is information to grow your business, because that's what we do. We provide information so that you can make better decisions about your business. And we take that responsibility really seriously.
Yeah. Do you think that movement back to print is actually because of the nervousness that potentially what they're reading online isn't actually true, because of there is a lot of content out there now that is AI generated and isn't potentially actually real? Like the people that I actually had somebody send me a message through Instagram to say, are you real? because they didn't know whether I thought I had more wrinkles than that, that they could see I wasn't AI generated, but they actually sent me that message. Do you think that's part of the transition back to print a little bit?
I think it's a little bit different. First, I think the tactile feel, and we're a tabloid-sized magazine. So I think the tactile feel of reading a book or reading a magazine has not gone away. I think the demographics of who we go out to, 64% of our readers are senior level. So VP, SVP, president, CEO, founder. And you're getting into people that are, more mature, so to speak. And I think they're used to reading it that way. And they like to see the photography and the print that way. I think the other thing that's happening is people are realizing how much of our privacy has gone away. That people that are following us, they're using algorithms, they're learning about us. And that desire to keep your own privacy in certain ways, I think is growing. Where you don't want to be tracked. I just want to sit and read a magazine.
Yeah.
I don't want to be fed something because I read that magazine.
Yeah.
And I think to some degree that's happening too.
Yeah, because online we're only fed what the algorithms tell us we want to see, right?
Exactly.
Whereas if you're reading a magazine, you can read whatever bits you're actually interested in, and you may be exposed to some things you didn't think you were interested in, but actually that's really interesting. I'd like to see that. If you'd like to look at sponsoring the Boat Princess podcast to bring your brand to an entire worldwide audience, from Turkey to the US, from Australia to the UK, from Poland to Portugal, then contact us at theboatprincess.com. We'd love to share your brand with the world.
Yeah, and I think there's that luxury for those of us that travel a lot. I travel over 100 days a year. And that time on a plane where perhaps you can close the laptop and not work the entire time you're on the plane, but you have that quiet where you can open a magazine and it feels decadent in a way.
Yeah.
I think a return to that is a good thing.
Yeah. And it's something you can do on a boat as well when you're out of range.
Yes.
Which is a nice thing. Yeah.
And I think people, you see that people are taking diets from their phones and diets from social media. There's so much content coming at us all at once. I think taking that breath and maybe just being able to focus on one thing is something that people yearn for.
Yeah. Yeah. That the digital detox process that's occurring at the moment, I think that's getting stronger because people are recognizing just how attached they are to their devices and how that's not necessarily good for them. It's like the new addiction of it's like smoking, as far as I can see, in terms of it's the new bad thing, really, that we haven't really worked out is a bad thing yet.
And
you know what I mean?
To a certain degree, yes.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I'll probably listen to when I listen to your podcast the most is when I'm walking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll walk and I'll listen. And because to me, that's a great opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
Moving my body, I always feel better after those endorphins start going. You're out in nature somewhere. I'm really blessed that I have something similar to the High Line in New York. It's an old railroad track that was made into a walking, hiking, and biking path.
Nice.
That runs about 8 kilometers round trip. And it's 2 minutes from my home. So I'll go walk the 606 trail, listen to a podcast, get informed, have a bit of exercise, and then start my day.
And it's interesting when we're doing that, when we're out in nature and we're walking, apparently it's a really good prevention of dementia and Alzheimer's and all those sorts of things because we're taking in nature whilst we're using our brain to walk. And if we're listening to a podcast as well, we're using it further as well. So, and I know I take in things a lot more when I'm doing that as opposed to driving or another way of taking in that media.
Yeah, and I would tell you that as much as it's good for my body, for me, it's a mental clarity.
Yeah.
I get more ideas as I'm walking, and I just feel more centered when I'm done. So it's my zen.
Talking of which, I know you work incredibly hard. You are a workaholic.
I am.
Let's face it, right? But I know you counterbalance that with some really strong adventures, if you like, that you've done recently. Can you share some of those with us and why you've done those?
So I made a promise to myself as I entered my 50s that I would have one thing for me each quarter that was just mine. And it can be simple. It can be dinner at my favorite restaurant with someone that I really want to spend time with. It can be, doing a little spa appointment. It can be just taking time to read. It can be a short trip, a long trip, or it can be an epic trip. I like to challenge myself. During COVID, one of my favorite things that I walked 1,000 miles the year of COVID.
Wow.
And got to know my city. It was my mental sanity. I also did a virtual Camino de Santiago during COVID with people from around the globe. And we got an email every day that told us where we were going, the history of it. It had photographs. It was really fun.
Yeah.
And I started doing the Conqueror challenges that year too, which are a chance. You can still do it. Conqueror challenges. You can look it up. It's an app on your phone. And you can walk the Amalfi Coast. You can walk Mount Fuji. You can do the Camino. They have different trips, and every 20% of the trail, you get postcards from where you are, and they plant a tree or they remove plastic from the ocean.
Okay.
So it's a great organization.
Yeah.
So when 2022 happened, I decided to do a real Camino. I didn't have a month, so I couldn't do the full Francés route. But I did the Portuguese route. So I did 192 miles, about a little over 250 kilometers of walking from Porto in Portugal to Santiago de Compostela in Spain, which was fantastic. Met amazing people, most of which I'm still in my Camino family. I'm still in contact with. And that point when all that you have to worry about is where you're putting your foot next, and you're in incredible scenery, it was so joyful for me that I now crave it. And I decided to up the ante. I had always wanted to go to Everest since I'd read Krakauer's book, Into Thin Air. And I challenged myself. And in 2023, timed it so that we would reach Everest on the 70th anniversary of when Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary reached the peak.
Oh my gosh.
So I was there. I reached Everest on April 29th, 2023, trekked for 9 days through the Himalayan mountains, couldn't shower for 8 days, took helicopters for the first time into the Himalayas, no showers, no heat. It was the adventure of a lifetime. I would do it again in a heartbeat, raised money for charity as I was doing it, and met extraordinary people. And the scenery there's no way to describe it. And then this past year, I went back and did the Camino Primitivo, which is more of a mountainous range hike. And next year, I will climb Kilimanjaro with 20 women in August.
Amazing.
So I'm excited. And one of my teammates from Everest is coming too. So looking forward to that.
Oh.
I like challenging myself. I was a competitive figure skater and then a professional figure skater. So athletics, perseverance, commitment. I mean, I didn't care if I was going to crawl. I was getting to Everest. So I just have that kind of personality. So being able to challenge myself that way just makes sense.
Yeah. Talking of having that sort of personality, something you said there about you did something for you, but you couldn't help yourself. You were raising funds for charity at the same time, because that is you all over. You don't do anything without wanting to help other people. That is you. So there's a number of projects that you are really strong in and you've put together, and one of those is your mentoring program that you have for women in the industry. Tell us all about that. That's an amazing program we really need to share with our listeners.
Yes. So in June when COVID was happening, when I joined Trade, we started doing 2 dinners for women, one for marketing and one for female leaders. And it was really for me to get to know women. I really only knew men and a few women that I knew from the board of directors of the National Marine Manufacturers Association. So couldn't do the dinners during COVID. So I said, well, what if I did something virtual? And I had done, during COVID, there were those mixology events. And I wanted to do something where we really could speak to each other and that we could learn. And then as I started going through it, I said, hey, it's virtual. I don't have to just do 25 people. Let's expand this out. And the more I thought about it, there was no large scale event for women. It just hadn't happened, at least not in North America. And I said, let's go for it. And as we went for it, I asked a friend of mine, Alicia Rodriguez, who's been an amazing executive coach out of Washington, D.C., who helped women get into C-suite and has become more of a holistic life coach, to come on and really do educational sessions. And by the time we were done, that first session had 350 women from 13 countries. And then beyond that, there were watch parties. So I think in total, we were close to 400. And that first event on June 3rd of 21, you just watched Pandora's box open. And I knew at that moment that need to gather and to inspire and to have a safe place to ask questions and to just learn as a group. It just started to happen, and there was no way to stop that snowball from going down the mountain. And one of the ways that I chose to help women get educated was through mentorship, because it wasn't happening. And of course, all genders are always welcome. We get 20 to 25% men. And the interesting thing with the men is they're fearful of coming to these events because they think we're going to bash men, that it's going to be a positive on women and a negative on men. And it never is. It's always about how do we as women gain more skill sets to understand how to adapt to the environment that we're in and thrive. So the mentorship came because I never liked the speed dating that they do, because you don't get enough time to really get into the meat. And I thought, for me, joining the boards as a salesperson, it got me into an environment where I could really be with leaders of the industry and learn in a different way than I had. So graciously, I went out to about 40 different leaders that first year and I asked them for 2 hours of their time, 4 30-minute virtual sessions. And then anyone that was in the first 5 years of their career could sign up during the week that we did it to meet at the times assigned with those individual leaders. And we had 75 sessions the first year, and it's just grown from there. And now the leaders have come from Europe and the US, and we had participants. We had as many men participate as we did women. Last year, we had people all the way to South Africa that participated, from France that participated. So it's become more global. And last year, we added reverse mentoring. So 30 minutes for a mentee to ask a mentor questions, and then 10 minutes for the mentor to ask the mentee, so that people that are at that CEO level have an idea of what it's like for a young person coming into the industry. And it's not only young people, it's people that have been in other careers that are entering the marine space. I mean, we take for granted being in it for so long, just the abbreviations, ICOMIA, NMMA, MRAA, IFBSO.
Yeah.
It's a whole language
Sure
that
is.
you have to learn. So to have that opportunity as someone entering the marine space to come in and choose someone from a sector that they want to learn about, whether they're the CEO of a boat company or they're the CMO, this chief marketing officer of Winnebago, or they're the head of engineering, whether it's a woman or a man. We have everyone from the former CEO of Brunswick to the head CMO of Volvo Penta that participate. So, and you and I spoke yesterday about expanding it to the APAC region as well.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Last year we had, well over 125 sessions happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Nona and I are looking forward to helping you through our networks. Yeah. Expand this incredible global initiative, because that's what it is.
Yes.
And really, because it is incredibly important. You yourself said earlier, you'd asked your mentors to help you with a decision as to whether you would go into media. And that's the sort of thing mentors can do. They can give you the other perspective of who you are and what they think you're capable of, because sometimes we don't necessarily allow ourselves to think we're capable of something. And a mentor can say, no, you can do that. So it gives us that extra energy to go forward with something perhaps we don't think we have the skill set for, but somebody else sees that we do.
And I can give you some examples of that, but I can tell you that 90% of our mentors and mentees have stayed in touch with each other. Yeah. And as I speak to some of the people that are mentors, they have said that their mentees have sought them out at different shows. And one of the mentees that I had, she had two other mentors, and we all told her that if she wanted to build her network and really understand the industry, to go to IBEX.
Yeah.
And on her own dime, she went on her own with her own funds. She went to IBEX this year.
Yeah.
She came we did a women's walk at IBEX, and she came to the women's walk. She also went and saw one of the boat builders that was one of her mentors. And I'm actually talking to her because I'm going to have an opening in my team, and I think she might be able to fill it.
Brilliant.
So you never know what can happen in building a network that you know and that gets to know you and might recommend you for something else.
Yeah.
As Malin said, get to know people who would mention your name in a room of opportunities.
Yes. Yeah, so true. And that women's walk, the women in marine events you do at boat shows and here at METSTRADE and IBEX and all those women's events you put together. I know you and I are both very totally dedicated to the cause that we're not bashing men. We're actually asking men to support us and encourage the women, because we need their support. We need their help sometimes to get, I know sometimes I need my husband's help in a meeting because if I say something, it's going to be treated differently to how he says it. Yeah. Just because of the demographic in the group sort of thing. So, and that's okay. You know, as long as you understand that sometimes you can use that to your advantage. If you've got somebody in the room that's got your back,
yes,
and then they can step in for you when they need to. So we actually need men sometimes to do that for us still, and sometimes they need women to do that for them in terms of bringing a completely different spec. They might be trying to explain something in a way that some other people in the room may not understand it because they're an engineer or something like that, and we translate it into something in a different way so that the people, oh, okay, I get it now. You know, so yeah. I think we can all help each other tremendously. But I know you sometimes get some feedback. Why do you have to have these women-specific events? I know you always say all genders welcome, but why do you still think they're necessary?
Women make up, we don't have the exact figure, but it's around 3% of the population that works in the marine industry. And believe me, it's grown. And there are a lot of women coming into the marine industry. The question is going to be, will we be able to keep them?
Yeah.
There's something called the broken rung that, you know, women get to a certain level, but then getting up to the next rung in the ladder doesn't happen and they leave. And I worry about that for our industry. I think it comes down to the way that humans interact with each other. If we interact with each other with respect and integrity and understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, women are incredible multitaskers.
Absolutely.
And I think if men understand that, they can utilize women to the best of their ability. Men are great decision makers. If women understand that, then it's the way that we interact, communicate with each other, and understand what each other wants is where sometimes the problems happen, but where the opportunity is as well.
Yeah.
And what I would say to you is I think that there's value in people gathering and learning from each other. And for women in particular, there are obstacles within this industry. For every man that's there to support you, there are men that are there as obstacles. It's just a fact of it. What I always say to women is the one thing that we always have control over, whether it's an obstacle coming from a woman or from a man, is that we have control of how we react. And my friend Alicia, who has done a lot of these women's events with me, she says, stop, breathe, give yourself one deep breath, and then respond. And the other thing with women is that they feel like they have to give an answer immediately. The one really good takeaway I have from Alicia is sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes the takeaway is, let me think about that. I want to give you a good answer. Let me come back to you.
Yeah.
They may say, when will you come back to me? But taking that time to think through sometimes is the best thing. And sometimes, I mean, I come from a Quaker environment where we believe in the power of silence. And sometimes silence speaks louder than words.
Oh, so true. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I've learned that from my husband. He's very good in diplomacy and, really understanding people and working a room and all those, working a meeting, not rather than a room. I'm better at working the room than he's working the room. So we both have very different talents, but he sometimes says, just leave the ball in your court for the minute, and I think that's really, and that's the sort of thing we can learn from each other, right? We have totally different approaches to life. Men and women at the end of the day are different. And isn't that wonderful? And,
yes.
And we can bring completely different things to the table and deal with things completely differently. And if we all use our ways of doing that together, it's a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. And I've moderated panels that have been mixed between men and women. I just did one at IBEX for our workplace study. But I think for women having this opportunity to gather and feel that it's a safe space to learn and get inspired. When we did the first one, what I didn't realize until I read an article that one of the young women working for a different magazine had written, she said, what they didn't realize they did today was they gave us role models.
Yeah.
And as I was on the subway this morning and a woman from Germany said, I so loved yesterday morning. I need to tell you that. And what I especially appreciated was when they talked about what their strengths were, because it made me think. And I think people need to see people mirror themselves. So for women in this industry is only 3% to have an opportunity where probably the majority of the panels that they go to throughout METS, aside from this one, for the most part are male dominated, to go to one that's female dominated. I know there was a female founders. I know that it's expanded. There was a female yachting awards, which is great to see it thrive and expand the way that it is.
At the Boat Princess, we have events, both online and in person, to network people in the boating industry and also to make women feel comfortable about joining us in the boating industry, teaching them, educating them, and making them feel like they're welcome. If you'd like to get involved in sponsoring any of those events, please contact us at theboatprincess.com. We'd love to hear from you.
I'm very intentional in what I do, as you know. Intentional even to the point of the charities, which I'm very excited about Room to Read for next year, the charity that we'll be supporting for the women's event. But I'm intentional about having different generations on that stage, having different sectors of the industry on that stage, different positions and titles on that stage, so that people can learn from just a really diverse group of women in there as well.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant program, and I really congratulate you on
Thank you.
Because you put a lot of work into that.
Yes,
you really
a lot
do.
of work to make it seem like it's completely effortless.
Yeah, exactly. How true is that? And you're going to be putting together a new magazine as well, aren't you?
Yes,
women? Yeah,
I'm really excited about that. So
yeah.
I've wanted to do up the ante when it comes to women in industry. I decided to do a Women in Marine magazine that will polybag with our June issue, and you'll be able to read it digitally as well, where we will profile different women in the industry. I'm still dealing with some new concepts, and that has also got a charitable component to it, and that will be partnering and raising funds for a charity. We'll be working with raising funds for the International Rescue Committee's Send a Girl to School program. So really looking forward to that in June. And we want it to be a celebration of women working in different companies. So we hope that whatever companies take space in the magazine, they use it to celebrate the women. I'm calling the magazine Impact.
Yep.
Because I really want it to be about the impact that these women are making on pushing the industry forward and pushing their companies forward.
Yeah, so good. And explain to the listeners, because you explained to me yesterday, and I was amazed by that charity, that the contribution is so little to make such a difference, really.
Yes, it's around $60 US to send a girl to from a refugee camp or an emerging country to school through their program, which is just amazing. I've done it for close to 20 years now. I've supported that charity. I had 2 aunts that were school teachers, and in their honor, after they passed, when they were alive and after they passed, every December I made a donation to send a couple of girls to school each year.
Yeah, so amazing. Yeah. And the Room to Read charity as well that you're doing at the events, that's another amazing charity.
Oh my God, Room to Read. If I had thought about it first, I probably would have done Room to Read for both. I'm glad that we'll support 2 different charities, but Room to Read, go to their website. I believe it's roomtoread.org or roomtoread.com. You can try either one. First of all, the people that work there are amazing. You can watch they did a video content on 6 different girls that had tremendous obstacles. One of them, unfortunately in some of these countries, they can't afford the cost of keeping the girl at home, and they wind up having a dowry, that they receive in order to be sold into marriage. And one of the girls said, "Please give me time and I will pay for myself to stay with the family." And she wound up planting a garden and figuring out through Google and the internet how to develop irrigation systems on the land that her family had. And not only was she able to stay with her family, but the garden that she built actually created produce that they could sell at the marketplace. And it became a revenue stream that made the family more prosperous. Wow. So to hear stories like that, and Room to Read not only works with girls and local NGOs and charities on the ground, but with the governments as well. They just do extraordinary things, and so happy. The event that we do here at METS is a free event. It will always be a free event. But as you go to learn about and RSVP for the Women in Marine Industry International event next year, you'll be able to click on and make a donation to that charity.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure the listeners have. Well, I hope they realize just how amazing you are in this chat with you, because you really are an incredible woman.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I really admire everything that you do, and you are a bit of a mentor for me. Yeah, I look up to you.
And like I said, it goes both ways.
Thank you. But so if people want to get involved in the mentoring program, if they want to get in touch with you, how's the best way of getting to you?
The best way to get to me is to email me. They can email me at mgoldsmith, GOLDSMITH, at aimmedia, AIMmedia.com. And or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. Just go to Michele J Goldsmith, or you can reach me on Trade Only as well. There's a link from Trade Only. Yeah. But I so appreciate you doing this. The last thing I would want to mention, if people are listening, is we did a tremendous workplace study, first time that the employees of the marine industry globally got a chance to voice what attracted them to their jobs, why they would stay, why they would leave, what they want out of their careers, all of the data. It was a 9-month journey to get that data out to them. We had close to 750 people and a focus group. If you go to tradeonlytoday.com/workplace-study, you can see highlights of it for free, and you can download the report for a small fee.
Brilliant. Yeah, because that was a big study.
oh my God, it was endless hours. I think if I
Yeah.
knew when I announced it how much work it would be, I wouldn't have done it. Self-inflicted wound. But I'm really, really glad that I did it because it was a baseline.
Yeah.
We divided it into women, men, and then under 45, over 45. So understanding what millennials and Gen Zs want versus what women want versus what mature men want, who's in what function, what pay gaps they are, where the industry is strong, where the industry is weak, where the opportunities are, how leaders should be talking to their staff. It was amazing to me. We asked what challenges people had, and we asked if burnout, were people taking credit for your work? Were they commenting on your emotional state, on the way that you dress? All kinds of challenges that someone might have in the last year. Where were they coming from and how often? We expected that the female number would be larger than the male number, but it was 72% women experienced those challenges. It was 58% men.
There you go. See? Yeah.
So, and I would say to you, I also think that some of it is unintentional.
Yep.
And I think it's just an awareness. Leadership is so important.
Yeah.
And so much comes down from the leadership in terms of culture, in the way that people treat each other within a company. But for leaders to be aware, especially with the Gen Z under 45 and millennial group, that the tolerance that they have for something of what might be acceptable 10 years ago, it may not be there today. So when I say it's unintentional, it's probably the way they've always spoken.
Yeah.
But the way that it's digested and taken in by different groups is different.
Yeah.
And having that awareness, I mean, those are some of the things. I mean, we really, as an industry, have 10 to 15 years to build the next generation of leaders.
Yeah.
Almost 40% of our industry leaders are going to time out. This is a really important window.
Yeah. Because you said the average age was 49, right, in our industry?
The median age is 49.5.
Yeah.
Internationally, 47.5. But we actually almost all the data that we did, we put in context. So we looked at Gallup, we looked at Bureau of Labor Statistics. So not only did we give you the numbers, but we gave you the numbers as they compared with other industries. And we are older than almost every single other industry.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I mean, almost over 11%. We're over 65.
Gosh. So hopefully there's some people listening out there that are wonderfully young and want to come into this industry because we need you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? Those younger people are craving being promoted. So what steps can we take? How can we educate them? Even if you're a small, lean, small company, can you invite them to meetings that expand their skill set?
Yeah.
Make them feel more important and more valued on a human level. They want that recognition and that value, and they want to feel that they're learning. And it's particularly difficult in this age of remote learning. But if they can get invited, even as a listen only, to a meeting that they weren't particularly allowed to be in before, and then you meet with them after and say, okay, what did you learn? Or even, we found that only 50% of companies even do annual reviews.
Yeah.
So getting feedback from your employees and then asking them, what do they want out of their career path? Not only telling them how well they do at their job or that they got some kind of raise, but okay, where do you want to go? Is there another aspect of the business that you want to learn?
Yeah.
Just asking those questions, first of all, it makes them feel valued and important. But beyond that, you may discover that they have a skill set. I met with an operations guy as a mentee last year who has an art background and wanted to start doing marketing.
Yeah.
No one in his company had asked if he wanted to do marketing or recognized that he was an artist. There are people within your organization that might have skill sets that you could really use that you're not utilizing.
And also those reviews can explain to somebody why they're not getting the raise.
Yes.
Because if it's a point of communication where you can say, listen, I would love you to give you this raise, but I need some more performance. I need some more KPIs. I need you to actually contribute more to the company to allow me to give you that raise. Because if I'm not increasing my revenue, where am I going to get the raise from?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
So
and
it's
I
in
would
those
say don't wait
conversations.
till an annual review to do that.
No.
You get more out of positive reinforcement and recognizing weaknesses as they happen and correcting them as they're happening than waiting a year to tell them. And I wouldn't be afraid to tell them that either. You give them the positive reinforcement and then you tell them where they're weak and how they can move up from there.
Yeah. And how you can help as a leader. You're obviously not feeling confident about doing that. So why?
Which circles back to mentorship.
Yeah. What training do you need? What do you need from us to help you get there, to help us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all of them want that mentorship and that learning. So it's taking that time.
Yeah. And the other thing is when you were talking about, people saying things they don't necessarily mean, that there's a lot of bias in the senior generation that is completely different to the bias of the younger generation. So we need to observe our bias as well. Oh, yeah, okay, that I said that because my value is of that, because that's how I've been brought up or how my generation was, or all those sorts of things. Your bias is completely different.
Well, and it can be something really simple. It can be something where they feel like it's endearing, like they say dear or sweets.
Yes.
Or something that says, good job, good job, dear. That kind of, and the way that people can take that is as an endearment, but they could also take it as being condescending.
Yes.
And putting you into that, you're a weak little female that needs that pat on the back. You've got to be really, really careful with that, treating them as much as you think it's an endearment, it may not be taken that way.
Yeah. So language is really important too.
Language is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. We got back into it again, didn't we?
I know, we did. Okay.
So good to talk to you, Michele. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do, because I know as much as you wanted to talk about me today, we could have spoken for an hour and a half about all of the things that you do for the marine industry as well.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have, and we'll see you on the water soon. Have you followed me on LinkedIn as Nikki Vo, the Boat Princess? I'll be posting details on what's going on in the boating industry, and you can also connect with me if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast and share your business story. Well, it's been lovely to have you listen out there, folks. I really appreciate your ears. And if you'd like to get in contact, just follow me on Instagram at The Boat Princess, and perhaps leave me a comment on today's picture of our podcast so that we can get an idea of what you thought about it. That'd be lovely. Take care, and we'll see you on the water soon.